If you want to make patterns and string runs like this, then this video is for you. Hello there, this is Sam with Second Tier Sound. Really nice to see you here. If you're new here, I create videos on how to create music and how to orchestrate within a DAW. If that interests you, maybe subscribe. So in the beginning of this video, we will look at the example I have created for this video and analyze it a little bit more deeply so you can see what I've done. Then after that, we will actually go through the patches in the East-West Hollywood Strings library so you can understand the different patches and what they're used for. After that, I will show you some techniques on how to create these runs in a pretty quick manner and also some tricks on how to make it easier for you to do them. And then lastly, I will show you how you can create your own run patches if you don't happen to have one yourself. So I've mainly used East and West libraries this time. So you can learn how to do these techniques without that library, but some things will be a little bit more specific for that particular library, of course. But let's look a little bit deeper into what I've done. So I've started with the stack slur, which is not found in the runs patches, but is basically a staccato which has some, what can you call it, legato transition between each notes to make it sound a little bit more realistic. You can find it in, for example, violins. You go to short, tight or loose, and there you have it right there. You can try just using the staccato, but I find that this sounds better. In the keyeditor, I have created an arpeggio basically. And so on. I've also used the velocity to create a little bit of an accent in the first beat of each bar. And then in the expression, I have a little bit of a curve. So it starts soft and ends up louder. Yeah. Under that, I have strings, basically violas, cellos, and basses. They're all using the same sort of patch, basically the mod speed. And that means that I can control what kind of shorts that is being heard. That is done with the modulation wheel. So you can see when it's all up, it's the longest one, and all down, the shortest one. There's a bigger variety, but in this case, this is all what was needed. Okay, you can also use the expression there to have a little bit of narc if you wanted. And then underneath that, I've created a simple French horn patch. And since I'm using 3-note chords, I find that the 2 French horns work really well. Depending on how big you want it, you could try with just the solos as well. So then you get 3 players instead of 6. When I create a quick mock-up, I usually don't use the entire brass. If I need it to be bigger and sound a little bit more realistic, then I add trumpets, tubas, and trombones. But if you're just having 3 parts in the mid register, then French horns are really good to work with. And this is what that sounds like. And in this case, I've also used the mod speed patch because it's a really good workhorse to get most ideas out. It has most articulations you really need. And then if you need to work with specifics like legato, then you load that up. So up here, I have the repetition run script, which I'm going to talk about more in a while, but this is what it looks like and whoops, and sounds like more or less. Yeah, it's a fairly good run script, I have to say. And then under that, I have the same script, but in the violas. And since they can go a little bit lower, the line is a little bit different. There you go. Okay, so that's pretty much it. Let's talk a little bit about the different kind of runs that exist in East and West. And if you have a different library, maybe this is not so important to you, but maybe you can pick up a trick or two that might match your library anyway. I have chosen this to go violins, in effects, playable runs, and the first one here, the violence repetition runs script. Now, how does that work? Well, if I hold down a key, you will hear a sort of repetition effect, almost like a tremolo or repetitions. Uh, One thing to note though is that these are not time synced, so it won't change depending on your tempo. But this patch is not intended to use as a repetitions. It is thought that way that if you are playing fast up and down, which I don't recommend you do, but if you are, then this script is really good at picking up the sort of transition between each note. All the repetition will work as a transition and create that run effect. So this is a very, very good script. I really think it's the best one I have tried for not having pre-recorded runs. The only drawback is that you cannot have long notes, which might not be a drawback if you're just going to create a run. That works perfectly. Also, it's not velocity based, which in this case I find being a plus, because normally when you do a fast run with your fingers, you don't have the same velocity on each keys, and therefore it can sound inconsistent. If you want to create volume change, you have to use the expression fader. So, for example, so for just a normal run up and down, this is your best patch, and I would just stick with that. But there are a few more ones you can try. The violence slur runs here, it's a little bit different. First of all, when you hold down the key, you get a long note, which can be nice if you want to end the run in a long note. It's also not affected by the velocity, and you have to use the expression fader. The other main difference is that it sounds a little bit less busy. It's a little lighter, so this could be good if you want maybe not have that enormous bombastic runs. You want a little bit lighter and not so wild. Then there are the light versions of these two, and I never use them. If you find that you're low on resources, then maybe this could be something to consider. I actually don't know what they're skimping on. Maybe there are less dynamic layers. I don't know. I haven't really noticed a big difference, but I use these. And the third one is the spiccato runs smooth. And the difference here is that it is a spiccato, and that means that each note has a little bit more of an attack. Let's listen to. If we slow down, maybe you can hear it a little bit easier. It's subtle, but it's there. And I find that this patch works really well for when you want to have more arpeggios or more sharp attack figures. Sharp attack figures, you know what I mean. And also, you can create longs with this one, but it has to be tied to the note previously. So if you just hit one note, you won't get a long note, but if you do two together, then you get a long one. And this long note can also be affected. You can have it with or without vibrato. Listen carefully. I hope you could hear that, and that gives you more of an option if you want to turn off the vibrato as well. So again, violence repetition run script, good for overall runs. Slur runs, a little bit smoother, a little bit lighter. You can create longs with this one. This one you can create longs with, and you can also affect the dynamic layer, and the spiccato is a little bit more obvious here. Why don't I use this one? Well, I don't need it, and I don't find it sounds very good. And it's an interesting, I don't know if it's a mistake or whatever, but when you hit the first note in the spic runs, it's silent. You won't hear anything until you hit the next note. And you can work around that. And I also find that the expression is odd because it has different behaviors. And I don't know if East and West were trying to be clever here to have different upstrokes and downstrokes. That might be the case, but it's not clear in the manual. And I just find it too fiddly. So I only use these three, and I mainly use this one on top here. Let's look a little bit at the other ones that exist as well. The second violin also has runs in the effects, playable runs, and it has more. And this is something that is really strange because I find that they're not consistent here. Yes, it does have the repetition run script. And first of all, I don't think it sounds very good. It just sounds way too messy and doesn't have that nice sound that the first violins have. So I don't use it that much. The other ones, I don't really know what they were going for. They don't tell anywhere what the difference is. That it's a lighter version, I get it. But version 2, I don't know what the difference is. You can try it out. I found that basically the second violin slur runs is probably the best one here because all the other ones, they have scripting problems, especially when you use the faders. There's inconsistencies in the samples. They cut off suddenly. And when you run the expression up and down, it just gets all kinds of artifacts. So this is unfinished and it's not good. And it's definitely not clear what they're using. But I would say don't worry about it. Use the first violins most of the time. If you need to double, then perhaps just use 2 of those patches. If you really want to have a second violin sound just because it's panned differently, whatever, you can still do that with the first violins. But I would say the repetition runs, if it's in the background, works okay. And the second violin slur runs, they're decent. Otherwise, this is not good. Sorry, East and West. Some good stuff, but that one isn't good. Then we have the violas, and they only have one version, and they work fine. And it's the violas repetition run script. And then we have the cello, which is the same. It only have one version, and it works fine. The basses, they don't have any runs because most of the time you don't need to run down there. But I've noticed if you really want to have a run from the basses, then use shorts. They work really well. If you play fast, for example, with the mod combos, then it sounds good. It's quite muddy down there, so nobody can really tell. Let's say you want to create a run from bottom to top, like this. Yeah, I haven't found too many runs libraries that has that option, so I really like that I can do it. So first, before we dig into this, there's something we need to think about. It is that the normal scale has 7 notes, and that is uneven. And in most meters is an even number. For example, 4/4. That means that you can have 4 beats in a bar. Even if you do triplets or anything else, you're not going to align properly so that it matches the scale from bottom to top. You're always going to be behind or after. So what you have to do is that you create a tuplet. In Cubase or any other DAW, this is quite easy to do. You look at your quantization and you go and you change your tuplets to 7 because you want 7 notes to fit within a beat. 16 would be way too fast. So we're going to go to quarter note, which is a beat. Okay? And as you can see, I've already done this in advance, like a cooking show. It fits 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 notes in the scale, and the 8th one again on the next beat. I can show you doing it here just quickly. Go in here, and if I use the step input, I can just... It sounds like this. And I could even go down. So that's basically what I've done here. Each section has 7 notes, the basses down here, and it works quite fine. I've just used the shorts, but it sounds like a run pretty much. And here the same thing with the cello and the violas and the second violin and the first violins. And in this case, I thought that even though I don't like the second violins very well, in the context, it worked quite all right. So if you want to go down again, you don't have to program it one more time. You basically just copy this and you reverse it. You might have a command for that. Otherwise, you go to MIDI reverse. Okay, see? And I take that one here. I reverse it. Next one. Reverse. I'm doing that with R because I have set that up in my DAW. Sorry, one step there. And then this one in there. Let's see what that sounds like. Yeah, pretty cool, huh? Let's look at figures that you can create with either your slur runs or your runs. So let's go into the editor here. You have to think when you create figures, what kind of figure do I want to do? A normal one would be, for example, figures of 4 notes. But this could be triplets. It could be 5 triplets. I don't know what it's called. Somebody help me. For some reason, my English has gone to I don't know where. And I don't know what the tuplets are called. Anyway, you know what I mean. So groups of 5, groups of 4, groups of 7, whatever. You have to set that. Okay, so I set groups of 16 notes in this case. And then I'm starting my step input. And then I just play my figure. It can be... there you go. Let's see what that sounds like. Yeah, pretty good. And it can, for example, can be done like this. You have 3 notes and a pause. So, and then I hit the arrow key on my keyboard. And so on. Let's see if that works. Yeah, that works really nice as well. We can try one more with the triplets. So then I just have to change my quantization here. We can try triplets. It's not that fast. So there you go. And that's how simple it is. And I really recommend that you use step input because a performance here, you probably will mess up. It's very difficult to be exact and you have to do a lot of retakes. And if you're worried about being too precise, it's too quantized, well, I wouldn't say that's the problem. With these fast runs, it doesn't sound that precise if it goes really quickly. And also some of these script, especially the repetition run script, it makes it sound a little bit wild anyway. You can combine both, so you have a little bit of a figure and then a run at the end. So let's look at how do you create these runs if you don't have a runs library, basically a runs patch that has these transitions. Well, there are a few ways. For example, I have created 2 versions here. One, I've used this anthology library that is a pretty decent library from 8dio, and it's not very expensive either. So I have a staccato sound, and I've also have a legato, and they play at the same time. So works pretty well. And then I also created one here, which is an Albion 1, where I have combined a short staccato with a long tremolo. And it sounds like this. And obviously it won't sound as good, but you can get pretty good results depending a little bit on what you have at the same time. So this one here, if we wanted to do that here, we could try, well, we can just put this one here. And we can put this one down here. And it won't sound as good, but you be the judge. It works all right. I would say my least favorite is the one I made with Albion. And that's not because Albion is bad or anything. It's just, it didn't work so well there. So what you have to try basically is to combine. And I would recommend that you try a legato patch if you have it. It has to be quite fast, the transitions. And either a staccato, or you can try spiccato as well, or a tremolo. If you don't have a legato, you can try longs or shorts with a tremolo. And that usually gets a pretty good effect that you can try as well. If you found this video helpful, maybe hit the like button. Or perhaps even subscribe to get more videos like this one. If you would like to study the MIDI files I've created for this example in more detail, you could always become a patron and download those files. Until next time, this is Sam signing out. Take care.